You get paid at your job. Companies get paid money that show up in revenues because you or the companies bring value to whoever is buying that service. You get paid at your job because you're valuable. You have something to offer. You have something valuable to offer. Another way I like to talk about it is solving somebody else's problem. Revenues don't just show up. Revenues are a proof that a company solved somebody else's problem, and that somebody else paid money for that solution. In this video, I'm going to talk about the oil upgrading problem and solution for Aduro, because Aduro, so far, we've been only focused on the plastic side, but there's another vertical that not very many people understand. And the way I'm going to address it, first I'm going to talk about just a little bit about oil, the oil business. Then I'm going to talk about the problem, and then I'm going to talk about the solution. But real quick, just to show you in a demonstration, what I have here is water and peanut butter and straw, right? Look at this. Do you see how easily water travels through? Let's call it a pipeline, because that's how oil gets transported on land. Let's try it with peanut butter. Doesn't go. So what does this have to do with Aduro? We'll stick around to find out. Some of you might know a little bit about the oil business, because if you've been invested in the oil tankers, which were the hot topic in 2020, you would probably know something about oil. So let me just give you some basics. You have two main differences. You have oil, crude oil, and you have a product. Product is like gasoline, jet fuel. So the way it's produced is there is oil producers that produce oil, and then oil is a ingredient that is purchased by refineries, and refineries take that oil and they turn it into a product like gasoline, jet fuel. You get the point, right? Now, what you have in front of you is oilprice.com, and as you can see, you have the first top. You have WTI crude and Brent crude. These are the most popular metrics for looking at how much oil sells for. So WTI crude, as of now, it sells for $80, $80.26. Brent crude sells for more, almost $86, right? And then you have all these other oils here that many of us are not familiar with, right? All of them different types of grades. Some of them are heavy, some of them are sour, some of them are sweet. And so why is it that some oils sell for more than others? Well, it has to do a lot with the quality of that oil. So for example, sweet and light is the oil that gets the highest price because it is the easiest to process by refineries into the finished product. But also oil is a physical product, so the transportation and the location of where it is produced makes a big difference, okay? So Brent crude is produced in the North Sea, okay, in Europe. And WTI, Western Texas Intermediate, is produced in the United States. And actually, when you just look at the product itself, WTI is a more desirable product. It's light and sweet. It is a better product than Brent. However, Brent carries a higher price. And that's because WTI is produced in the US and it's landlocked. It's within the country. So in order to move it, you have to move it through pipelines wherever whichever refinery you're selling it to. If you're selling it within the United States, you move it through a pipeline to that refinery. If you want to ship it somewhere else, you have to move it through pipeline, and then you have to put it on a oil tanker, right? And then the oil tanker takes it wherever it needs to go across the continent or whatever. Brent crude has a much easier transportation routes because Brent crude is produced in the North Sea. It's already on the sea and it's very close to all the ports, and it can be put right on the oil tankers and shipped wherever it needs to be shipped. So that's why the price of Brent is higher than the price of WTI, even though WTI is more desirable, right? And then what I want you to pay attention to is a right here called Western Canadian Select, WCS, right? Look at the difference that WCS is trading in relation to the other two. So if we compare it to Brent, the differential is almost $30. If we compare it to WTI, it's almost $25, right? And what is Western Canadian Select? Well, that's the benchmark that is used for heavy oil, and Canada produces a lot of heavy oil. So remember how I said what's the most desirable is light and sweet. Canadian is heavy and sour, and I'm just making generalization, but the reason why this product sells for less, because it's, number one, it's heavy and sour, it's less desirable, and also because it is much harder to transport, and it's also landlocked. So this distinction and this understanding is the foundation of understanding Aduro's upgrading technology. Let's talk about the problem that the Canadian oil producers face. You see, Canada produces a lot of heavy oil from oil sands. And as I already showed you, heavy and sour oil gets less than WTI and Brent. And also, as I showed you at the beginning of the video, where I showed you water and how water or something liquid can travel through pipelines very easily. And then when you have something like heavy oil, bitumen, which is like peanut butter, it doesn't flow through pipelines. That's a major problem, because not only is this product more desirable and you can sell it for more, this product is heavy, it cannot travel very well, and you get less money for it. So that's a major problem, okay? So putting some numbers on it, it's very difficult because each producer is different, each product is different, geographies are different, but I'm still gonna try to put some some numbers on it just so that you can understand the significance of the problem, so that later when I present you with the solution, you will appreciate the solution better. So if a product is something like peanut butter, and that is the product at the production facility, you already know that it's going to cost you a lot more to move this than something that's liquid, right? So you can't really sell it to a refinery that's really, really far. That's number one, okay? And also, heavy oil, you see, in order to process heavy oil, you have to have a complex refinery. And most of the refineries in the world are simple refineries, and they're not able to process heavy oil. They don't have the capability of processing heavy oil. Now, refineries in the US, especially in the Midwest, they are able to process heavy oil because they have the technology to process heavy oil. And they actually like to purchase heavy oil from Canada because heavy oil generates higher margins for them. But also, the higher margins are possible because they are literally the only buyer. Think about this. You have a product that's heavy oil, and there's not a lot of buyers that can buy it. So the buyers, the refineries, have an upper hand. So the producers of heavy oil in Canada, they are price takers. Whatever the refiners in the US tell them to sell it for, they have to take that price. So that's on the revenue side, right? On the revenue side, they can sell this product somewhere close to Western Canadian Select, but not exactly at that price. They have to take less, usually a discount, some discount, $5 to $10, depending on the product, less than what it says. Okay, so they're already selling it for maybe 52. Okay, and now what about the production costs? Well, again, it depends on the producers, but what I'm reading is that the production costs for heavy oil are anywhere between $12 to $30. Okay, and that's without capex. That's just opex. So we're not talking about building the facilities. That's just 12 to 30. So if we take the average of that, it's going to come out to about 21. So let's just call it 20, right? So it costs $20 to produce that heavy oil, right? Now you have that heavy oil, right? It cannot flow through pipelines, right? You have two options. You can take that heavy oil and you can try to send it to a pipeline, or you can put it on a rail. Rail is very, very expensive. But now, in order for this to flow through pipelines, you have to dilute it. Okay, you have to dilute it with a product that makes it more liquid so that it can flow through pipelines. And the industry, it's a big industry around the problem. It's called diluent, and diluent is a petroleum product. Remember how I said crude is the source? Refineries take crude and then they refine it into a product. And product could be gasoline or jet fuel, or diluent is one of the products. So in order for these producers to ship this, they have to buy the diluent, right? They have to transport the diluent to wherever their production site is. They have to blend it, okay? And then they have to ship the blended product through pipelines to a very limited number of buyers, right? Which don't pay you a lot of money. So again, from what I'm reading, the cost, and the crazy thing is that Canada doesn't produce enough diluent to satisfy the demand for the diluent in order to send heavy oil, bitumen, to the US. It doesn't produce it, so it has to import some diluent from the US so that it can export heavy oil to the US to a limited number of refineries, right? It's crazy. And so the cost, from what I'm reading, the cost of the diluent, and one more thing is, so if how much diluent is needed in order to for the heavy oil to flow through the pipelines? Again, it depends on the product, but on average, you need 30%. So think about this: 70% is your heavy oil, right? 70% of your heavy oil, 30% is diluent, which is like waste that you don't really want. You have to pay for it, you have to transport it, you have to import it, and then it also takes up space in the pipeline, right? So the cost of the diluent, I saw numbers of about $5 per barrel, and then the cost of transporting heavy oil to the refineries is about $10, right? So we have so far the OPEX, which again doesn't include the CapEx, right? About $20. Then you have another $5, so that's $25 now for buying diluent, right? So you're at $25 now. Then you need another $10 to transport it. So now you're at $35, right? $35, and you're selling it for less than Western Canadian Select, right? So 35 minus, let's say 53, right? Or 52 minus 35, you're making about $17 on average per barrel, right? Now, what happens when recession hits and then the oil price gets hit, right? All of these costs stay the same. It still costs you to produce, $20. You still got to get diluent. You still got to mix it. You still got to blah 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 blah. So they're operating not on very great margins, right? And now, another crazy thing is that there is a lot of major oil companies producing heavy oil in Canada, but then there's also smaller producers in Canada that don't have the mixers, right? They don't have the mixers to mix diluent with heavy oil, and they have to take their heavy oil, truck it to a mixer before it can be shipped. From what I understand, that mixer costs another $10 to $15 per barrel. So these small producers are literally selling heavy oil at a profit of like $2 per barrel. So that's the problem. Okay, now let's talk about the solution. Hopefully now you understand just how major of a problem it is to transport heavy oil to the final destination, which is the refineries. And especially for the small producers, how big of a problem this is, considering that they don't have the mixer and they have to pay somebody else to mix diluent with heavy oil in order to transport it through pipelines, right? So imagine if there was a solution that makes this product transportable through pipelines without using diluent, and also making that product upgraded so you can sell it for more money, right? So in other words, if you look at here, take this product into something that sells for more than Western Canadian Select, where before you had to sell it at a discount, and now you can sell it for more than Western Canadian Select. And of course, I don't know exactly how much more because it will depend on the product. But let's say, for example, that before you had to sell it for $5 less than Western Canadian Select, and now you can sell it for $5 more than Western Canadian Select, and now you've created just $10 worth of extra value, right? Because now, if you can sell it for more, and because you don't need as much diluent, remember the cost of diluent, acquiring, importing, and all that was about $5, right? So you created $10 worth of value just by being able to sell it for more than Western Canadian Select, and now you also eliminated the $5 of diluent, so you created like $15 of value, right? Do you think? And then that's not talking about the small producers that also save by sending it to the mixer, right? So if you had a solution like this, don't you think that the Canadian oil producers would be very interested to hear the solution? And that's exactly why Aduro is flooded with interest, not just on the plastic side, but from oil upgrading, from oil producing companies in Canada. They're flooded with interest because of that solution. Here on Aduro's website, the HBU, hydrocalymic bitumen upgrading. So bitumen, it's bitumen, some people use it like, as the same as heavy oil. There's more to it, but, for our purposes, bitumen is heavy oil, right? Property upgrading for heavy crude and bitumen. Water-based chemical conversion process that operates at relatively low severity conditions, targets problematic asphaltenes, significantly improves the physical and chemical properties of heavy crudes, right? So it upgrades, makes the crude better, right? And then the value of the upgraded crude is higher than the Western Canadian Select, which is what I was telling you. Greatly reduces and eliminate diluent requirements. So again, to summarize this, it's a solution that lets producers sell the product for more than Western Canadian Select, where before they had to sell it at a discount. It reduces the diluent, so it makes it more liquid, so you can transport it with little or no diluent. And you know what that also means. When you upgrade heavy oil and it's cheaper to transport it, now you can transport it further. You don't have to take the price from Midwestern refineries that are like the only buyers. You can sell it to refineries all over the U.S. You can transport it further. You increase the buyer pool of refineries that are able to process your oil, and therefore it increases the price, right? Now, what does something like this would mean for Aduro? Well, there is, of course, if there is a $15, for example, and again, it will change from client to client, but I still want to use some numbers. If there's $15, of value being created for the client, and it costs, let's say, $5 of OPEX to create that value, because it costs something to use Aduro's technology, right? Then the net value created in this example would be about $10. And based on what Aduro, the kind of calculations that Aduro did on the plastic side, that $10 would be shared between the oil producer and Aduro for royalty to Aduro. And on the plastic side, I think it was like 30%. So 30% of 10 is like $3 per barrel, right? And also what I didn't mention before is that this kind of upgrading would produce carbon credit for the producer. And then carbon credit would also be something that would be shared. So Aduro would get a part of that carbon credit, probably through a higher royalty or something like that. At this point, it's a little too early. Aduro didn't do this kind of calculation, and the press release that Aduro had with Prospera, which is a small Canadian producer, this is like the first one that they're going to be like working out these numbers. So we'll get more in the future, but I want to get ahead of it. I want to understand this as much as I can with the limited information that I have. But so now if I know that there's a potential for Aduro to add value to these producers and Aduro to capture, I don't know, $3 per barrel, or you can say $2 per barrel, $1 per barrel. I mean, it will change. Now, what could this mean? Well, Canada produces 3.5 million barrels per day of dilbit, and dilbit is bitumen mixed with diluent, right? So it produces around 3.5 million per day. So how much of this could Aduro's technology capture? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get too crazy about it, but I think it's pretty realistic that it could capture maybe 100,000 barrels per day to maybe 300,000 barrels per day, right? So if we did the calculation of 100,000 barrels per day and we used $2 per barrel, that would be $200,000 of pretty much pure profit for Aduro per day. And if we do it 360 days, that would be $72 million per year. Just, pure royalty, just from the oil upgrading, right? And just Canada. I'm not talking about all the other areas that have heavy oil and they have the same problem, or areas where the heavy oil is not economical to produce because it costs too much in diluent, too much in shipment to ship it, right? So this is just Canada, right? So from that vertical alone, which you and I know plastic is the sexy vertical, but this is another vertical that we haven't really talked about it. How much is 72 million per year of, almost pure profit worth? $1 billion? More than $1 billion. $2 billion? I mean, put whatever number you want on it. This is like pure profit. And so that's on 100,000 barrels per day. What if they were able to capture 300,000 barrels? That would be 216 million. 216 million. That's worth $5 billion. $5 billion. So anyway, I will leave you with this thought. I strongly suggest to you is you study it up on your own. If I made any mistakes and you guys know more about it, please feel free to correct me. I am in the middle of myself learning and trying to grasp, trying to understand the problem first, trying to understand the solution. And the more I read about it, the more I study it, the more excited I get. But so that's just me. So anyway, I will leave you again with this. Remember, liquid, easy to transport. This doesn't go. That's a problem. If your company has a solution for this, true solution, and you own a percentage ownership in a company, you will probably benefit. Thanks for watching.